Good. As I said, good morning and welcome to the Christabelle Spiritualist Church in beautiful Cherry Valley, Illinois. This morning we have a very special day ahead. This is actually the Sunday before the anniversary of the birth of Andrew Jackson Davis, the gentleman whose picture is on the wall here. And so we're going to be kind of doing a little bit more of an Andrew Jackson Davis themed service today. But let's start a little bit normally. So if there's any volunteers who would like to start out by ringing our Christabelle this morning, feel free to run down there. We can have more than one person do it. Hey, go for it. Like I said, we can have more than one person. It's fun. There you go. Now you got it. Thank you. And before we go any further, if you could please turn off your electronic devices or at least put them on vibrate so that there's no disruptions. Looking at me. All right. Let us begin with our weekly announcements for today. As I said, today we're having a very special birthday celebration in honor of Andrew Jackson Davis. And for those of you who are not aware, he was one of what we always call the forerunners of modern spiritualism. And we're going to be talking more about him a little later. But we will also be singing Happy Birthday at the end of our service to him. So for those of you who are singers, I'm going to ask a couple of you to kind of help lead that. But we will also be having birthday cupcakes that are decorated just like sunflowers, and those are courtesy of Samantha Heading. So we'll have cupcakes after church. Anyone who would like to serve the platform, please see me after church. Just so that everyone is aware, platform etiquette meeting as well as a current signed code of ethics is required to serve the platform in any capacity. That includes chairperson, speaker, healer, or medium. And according to NSAC bylaws, a new code of ethics is required to be signed every year, just so you're aware. We've also created a small lending library, which is in the healing room off the chapel here. There's a book that you can sign out so you can check something out, and then you can just sign it back in when you return it. We do have several books on spiritualist subjects, but we also have books on some other things as well that aren't necessarily strictly related to spiritualism, but I think you'll like them anyway. Our next Wednesday evening spirit greeting service is scheduled for August 11th. So this coming Wednesday, which also happens to be, synchronistically, Andrew Jackson Davis's real birthday. We start at 6:30 and we go until everyone has had a reading. The cost is $20 per person, and we do limit that to 20 people so that everyone can receive a reading without having to wait forever, which, sometimes that does happen. For all of my mediumship students out there, and I do see a few of you out there, don't forget to do your homework every day. Don't forget how important it is to remember to be consistent. Now, if you're having any issues, I also created a group text for everybody, so if you haven't gotten one from me, let me know, and we can get you on that group text. But also feel free to contact me if you have any questions or any issues with anything that you're developing. The air conditioner in the multi-purpose room is not blowing cold air. The blower works, but there appears to be something wrong with the condenser. So if anyone would like to attempt to fix it, we would appreciate help. Otherwise, if anybody knows of an inexpensive or would like to help us out by purchasing one, we would really appreciate it. We need at least a 9,000 BTU unit. I apologize, I'm getting tongue-tied this morning. To make it functional in the multi-purpose room. For those who would rather provide their offering online rather than here during church, we do also have a virtual offering plate that is able to be found on our church's website or our church's Facebook page, as well as on our YouTube channel underneath any of the sermons. So if you prefer to provide your offering that way, we would greatly appreciate that. As much as we appreciate you here in person, just so you know. We need all the help we can get with that. Okay, now that the business stuff is out of the way, let us bow our heads and we will begin our church service officially with our invocation. Infinite intelligence, We direct our thoughts in this hour we are together, asking that your Spirit permeate our souls with love, harmony, peace, and a joy of communing with like-minded people. We ask that our service be blessed with only the highest of knowledge, and that it be given in accordance with our understanding, so we may continue to go forward and use spiritualism's teachings in our daily lives. Amen. Now, what spiritualism is, the essence of what our belief system is, who we are as spiritualists, can really be wrapped up in 9 statements. And we call those 9 statements our declaration of principles. At this time, if you could please open your hymnals to the front inside cover, and I see a lot of you are way ahead of me, and join me in reading aloud our declaration of principles. Give you all a minute to get there. We believe in infinite intelligence. We believe that the phenomena of nature, both physical and spiritual, are the expression of infinite intelligence. We affirm that a correct understanding of such expression and living in accordance therewith constitute true religion. We affirm that the existence and personal identity of the individual continue after the change called death. We affirm that communication with the so-called dead is a fact scientifically proven by the phenomena of spiritualism. We believe that the highest morality is contained in the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We affirm the moral responsibility of individuals and that we make our own happiness or unhappiness as we obey or disobey nature's physical and spiritual laws. We affirm that the doorway to reformation is never closed against any soul here or hereafter. We affirm that the precepts of prophecy and healing are divine attributes proven through mediumship. Yes, we do. It's my favorite part of the week, personally, but I know I say that every week, too. And now we shall begin with our healing portion of our church service today. At this time, I will now read from our list of absent friends who are in need of healing. After I finish reading from this list, if there is anyone that you would like to add to the list, feel free to just say their first name out loud. And then as we are saying these names, I ask that you please send as much healing, as much love, as much compassion as you can to the names on this list, as well as to everyone else present. Ruth and Hank, Barb, Gail, Ali, Matt, Joan, Fred, Debbie, Ryan, CJ, Donna, Becky, Geraldine, Charlie, Sherry, Autumn, Kate, Alex, Stephanie, Tim, Jeff W., Lori, and Samantha. Does anyone have any names they'd like to add? No? Okay. And now we will be playing our healing hymn. So if you could all please turn to hymn number 6, Hand in Hand with Angels. We have a big crowd today. Let's really hear everything. Let's hear it loud. Hand in hand with angels, through the world we go. Brighter eyes are on us than we blind ones know. Tender voices cheer us, then we deaf will own. angels, ever let us go. Apparently we're doing the fourth verse. Leading to the strong ones, drawing up the stone. One electric love chord, thrilling all with fire. Soar we through the ages, higher ever higher. Thank you, everyone. And now we shall conclude the healing portion of our church service. Oh, and I should mention very quickly, we have moved our hands-on healing portion of our church service to prior to church, starting at 10:30. So if you are interested in having a healing, we do have people here at 10:30 in our healing room. So just so that you're aware of that. Now, if you could all please, we will join together in reading the prayer for spiritual healing found on the back cover on the inside of your hymnals. And if you could please join me in reading that aloud. I ask the great unseen healing force to remove all obstructions from my mind and body and to restore me to perfect health. I ask this in all sincerity and honesty, and I will do my part. I ask this great unseen healing force to help both present and absent ones who are in need of help, and to restore them to perfect health. I put my trust in the love and power of God. Amen. Okay, now, at this time, your service for today will be given to you by your Pastor Mark Dorset, and as soon as I take a quick drink, we will be ready. So, as I said at the very beginning of this church service, today is a very special day for us here in the Spiritualist Church and here at Christabelle. So, how many of you wonderful Christabelle sunflowers out there are familiar with the name Andrew Jackson Davis, beyond me just saying it today? How many of you know that name, just out of curiosity? All right, most of you do. I'm glad to hear that. He is our guest of honor today. So those of you who may not be aware, Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis, or AJ to his friends, was an incredible medium, healer, author, and all-around great guy. He is very well known by his nickname, the Poughkeepsie Seer. So if you don't know the name Andrew Jackson Davis, you might know the Poughkeepsie Seer. To my mind personally, AJ was the person who was most directly responsible for much of the foundation that modern spiritualism is built upon. And I know that some people might find that to be a little bit of a controversial statement, and not to take anything away from the Fox sisters or people like Moses Tull, allow me to explain why this gentleman has not only one, but two separate holidays in the Spiritualist Church. Mr. AJ's birthday is not actually until Wednesday, as I said during our beginning, but that's not going to stop us today from celebrating his 195th birthday. So, in honor of this momentous occasion, let's give him our Christabelle best and celebrate in the way that only we spiritualists can. How do we do that, you ask? Go ahead, ask. How can you do that? All right, like this. Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis, this is your life. We're going to spend about the next 15 or so minutes before our next commercial break talking about Andrew Jackson Davis and his life. And just what an interesting life he really had. So we're going to talk about why he is such a revered figure here. I mean, he really has contributed an incredible amount to the science, philosophy, and religion of modern spiritualism. Born in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1826, Jackson Davis was the son of a jack-of-all-trades named Samuel and a homemaker named Rachel. It was said that his mom was extremely patient and shy, as well as she herself being sensitive to the vibrations of spirit. So, put plainly, she was a medium. And I actually think this is a really good example of how, at least in my experience, genetics does often, but not always, play a role in a person's intuitive or psychic abilities. But this also goes to show that for anybody who was not aware, mediumship really did exist before the Fox sisters and their experiences. AJ was one of 6 children and grew up extremely poor. As a child, he had a grand total of about 5 months of schooling. It was said that he was timid, clumsy, and awkward. Oh, and a sickly child. But he also suffered from many illnesses as well. Just out of curiosity, can any of you other mediums out there relate to this? Because that description of his childhood kind of fits me to a T. He had many, many visions and experiences, even as a child, that would prepare him for the life he was to later lead. A couple of very vivid examples actually stand out regarding his experiences as a child. And again, see if any of you mediums out there can relate to this. When he was about 12 years old, AJ became gravely ill and very nearly transitioned to spirit. The doctors told him that he was not allowed to have cold water. Spirit interceded and suggested that he drink something else instead. He was told, "You may drink the sweet water of the maple trees." He did so, and voila, he was healed. Then, a few years later, in 1841, he was walking into his yard when he suddenly had a black veil fall over his face. As he was fumbling for the door latch to his home, a golden radiance appeared in front of him, and he heard his mother's voice calling to him. "Come here, child. I want to show you my new house." The vision cleared, and he pounded on the door to his house, only to have the neighbor answer and tell him to just wait a bit. It's your own mother that's a-dying. So in the moment of his mother's death, he had a vision about it. And I'm sure that everybody in this congregation, everybody here has had some sort of an experience like that. Now, it may not be quite as dramatic as what AJ experienced, but I'm curious about this. I am, actually. Show of hands, how many of you have had some sort of a premonition or a feeling or some other experience when a loved one was either in the process of physically dying or immediately after? That's what I thought, quite a few of you, okay. Now, moving on in AJ's life, we get to late in 1843, December 1843 to be exact. So late December 1843, sorry. After witnessing a series of lectures on what at the time was referred to as animal magnetism or mesmerism, Mr. William Livingston became interested in the subject of mesmerism and asked AJ if he could try to magnetize him. From here on out, just so that you know, I'm going to refer to animal magnetism or mesmerism as our modern terminology of hypnosis or hypnotism, just so that you know. So Mr. Livingston, I presume, decided to try and hypnotize AJ. To put it mildly, the experiment was a success. AJ easily entered into the hypnotic state, and while there, it was discovered that he could become clairvoyant and that the human body became transparent to his eyes in what's called X-ray clairvoyance. And the next 3 months or so were actually an incredible blur of new experiences and hypnotic experimentation for AJ. New Year's Day, 1844, he soul traveled, or what we would think of as astral projected, for the very first time. After that, he said that he was born again into spirit. He also saw auras for the very first time, followed by the walls disappearing, and suddenly he found himself to be in what is essentially what you would think of as a state of nirvana. In other words, AJ became one with everything in nature. And I cannot stress enough just how amazing that feeling is if you've ever experienced it. Oh, and I should mention that during this time, every time that he would go into this state where he was in this trance state, he required someone else to hypnotize him to reach that. And so the only way he could really utilize these wonderful gifts was to have somebody put him into a trance. All of that changed, however, on March 6th, 1844. He entered into what is called a superior state of consciousness, and he did so without the help of a hypnotist. And from here on, AJ's work took on an entirely new and different aspect. A few days later, one of the watershed moments in the life of Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis actually occurred. Okay, let me see if you can kind of recognize where I'm going with this, just when I talk about its significance to the science, philosophy, and religion of spiritualism. I'm sure that if you've been awake so far, you're going to know exactly where this is going. While walking in a rural area, AJ entered his superior state of consciousness. He then started having visions that would lead him to his first meeting with his spirit guides. Swedish engineer, philosopher, and all-around overachiever, Emanuel Swedenborg, as well as Galen, a well-regarded physician in ancient Greece. Both explained to AJ that they were there to help him on his path. During this meeting, Galen described his entire medical system to AJ, who, if you'll remember, had experienced X-ray clairvoyance, which led him to be able to diagnose various physical ailments, diseases, conditions, and such. So, of course, hearing this medical system just fascinated AJ. Well, then, Galen gave AJ a silver staff that had a synopsis of his entire medical system engraved upon it. The thing is, and, there's always a thing, isn't there? But the thing is, as AJ was going to leave the area, his clothes got tangled up while he's trying to climb over a fence that had a railing on it. And so he gets all tangled up and his clothes get all frustrated. He gets all frustrated because his clothes are all stuck. So losing his temper, AJ asked Galen to hold his staff while he extricated himself and climbed over the fence. Once he cleared the fence on the other side, he asked for Galen to give him his cane back. And that's where Galen told him that first, AJ must learn not to become too elated or too depressed, and that in time, he'd return the staff. Fast forward a few weeks. As is wont to happen with visions of this nature, AJ's memory was a bit fuzzy on what happened and exactly what it was that he had lost. Suddenly, he sees an image of Galen's staff before him. And suddenly he sees a vision of the staff, and then a flash of light, a cloud of dust, and a mighty high of silver. No, I'm just kidding. He sees a flash of light followed by this screen of whiteness right in front of him. And the following words appeared on this sheet of whiteness. Now let's see if some of you can remember this. Behold, here is thy magic staff. Under all circumstances, keep an even mind. Take it, try it, walk with it, talk with it, lean on it, believe on it forever. Now, obviously a bit taken aback, AJ asked, is that long sentence my magic staff? And the phrase he had been looking at just disappeared and was replaced by a single word. Yes. And in that moment, a catchphrase was born. Under all circumstances, keep an even mind. Now, even though this was an incredible contribution to the world in and of itself, Spirit was far from done with Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis. In a period of just over 2 years, AJ gave over 150 lectures in New York City. He also published books and periodicals on philosophy, or specifically what he was calling his harmonial philosophy. Now, bear in mind that a lot of this was actually occurring prior to March 31st, 1848. And we all know what happened on that day, right? The Fox sisters first communicated with Mr. Charles B. Rosna in their cabin in Hydesville, New York, which really kicked off modern spiritualism because it took mediumship and seances out of a dark room and out into the masses. Now, speaking of which, on that day, that same day that the Fox sisters were communicating with Charles Rosna, AJ recorded the following passage in his dictionary, and I love this. About daylight this morning, a warm breathing passed over my face, and I heard a voice, tender and strong, saying, "Brother, the good work has begun. Behold, a living demonstration is born." I was left wondering what could be meant by such a message. I have a feeling it really didn't take him too long to figure out what that message was about. The news of the events at Hydesville actually spread quite quickly, especially through the Northeast, but through the entire United States, and within a few years, Europe and the rest of the world. AJ continued to lecture and tour. he became a very well-known X-ray clairvoyant who specialized in diagnosing illnesses and in assisting treatment. He also did go to medical school and actually became a medical doctor. And also, between 1845 and 1883, he wrote or dictated over 30 books on incredible varieties of spiritual subjects. Okay, now, on to the reason that AJ has 2 holidays in spiritualism. How many of you are familiar with the term Lyceum? All right, most of you. Now, for those of you who are not aware, think of Lyceum as being the spiritualist version of Sundays. In 1863, and this is how that actually came about. In 1863, AJ had a vision of how children in spirit learned while they were in Summerland and would learn and were educated. He saw groups of children all studying objective lessons about the natural sciences, among other things. And this vision and others had such a strong effect on him that on January 25th, 1863, the other spiritualist holiday of AJ's, he founded the first children's progressive lyceum in Dodsworth Hall in New York City. And that's the date that we celebrate this founding, is January 25th. And I'm sure some of you remember that because we did a service on that. Unfortunately for AJ, poor health forced him to leave that wonderful creation, and other well-meaning individuals took over. In time, ordinary Sunday school was substituted for the Lyceum. And this really truly grieved AJ because he had been trying to create a school that would make good thinkers as well as harmonious and wholesome people. Now, if you really study what the Lyceum was about, I think you'll find that his Lyceum idea did not go away, it did not just disappear, that actually it was continued on in the form of what we would now think of as Montessori schools. So if you look at it, AJ's idea still lives on, it's just in a different form. And I'd already had visions, or I'd already spoken briefly about AJ's visions of children learning in spirit, but I haven't really touched on just how many detailed descriptions he gave of his experiences with Summerland. The idyllic plane of existence that we all go to after we make our transition to spirit. It is in quite a few ways very similar to the earth plane that we inhabit, except the biggest difference is just how much love, compassion, joy, and healing that exists there. Seriously, if you've ever made your trip there, you can soul travel there. It is beyond beautiful. Summerland is everything that you could possibly hope for. Outrageously incredible landscapes beyond anything we can imagine. Gargantuan and amazing buildings that are created by architects in spirit. People all learning, growing, striving, and thriving. And I know you were waiting for that phrase through this whole sermon. And they're doing so happily. And one of the reasons that I am so fascinated by Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis is the fact that my own personal experience with how things work in this life and the next really do jive so completely with his own. I've grown up with spirit around me at all times, and it's just a part of my life and experiences, just much like it was for him. Even though AJ spent his life promoting his harmonial philosophy, in his autobiography titled The Magic Staff, he considered himself to be a devout spiritualist from the 1850s onward, due to spiritualism's experiences and beliefs that aligned with his own. Now, AJ transitioned to spirit on January 13th, 1910. As you go forth this week, please, beautiful Christabelle sunflowers, be mindful of Mr. Andrew Jackson Davis and how, in so many ways, if it wasn't for his prolific writing, lecturing, and touring to bring the light of truth to the world, it is quite likely that modern spiritualism would not exist, at least not in the ways that we know it today. So, thank you, and happy birthday, AJ. At this time, I ask our ushers to please come forward for the collection of the offering. If you could please bow your heads momentarily. Infinite Spirit, we give thanks for these gifts so generously given. Without these gifts, we cannot grow. We ask a blessing for what is shared with us today and a special blessing for the givers. May they continue seeing the law of abundance in their lives. We dedicate these gifts to the future of our church and to spiritualism. Amen. And now for the commercial portion of our service. I'm speaking to especially the people who are watching us virtually, but those of you out in the congregation, anything that you have that you can assist us with in the offering plate or a virtual offering plate would be greatly appreciated. As you can see, we do have a lot of work that we're doing here to improve things and to keep the grounds looking beautiful. So anything that you can provide, any assistance that you can give, we really do appreciate it here. And it all goes to the upkeep of the chapel and to help to improve our wonderful little community here. So thank you. All right, now, it's my favorite part of the service coming up right here. We will now begin our spirit greeting portion of today's church service. And in order to do so, we will start with our message hymn, which will be hymn number 11. I ask that for this one you please stand so that we can help raise the vibration of the chapel and really let Spirit know we're ready for it. Hymn number 11, In the Sunlight of Today. And it is a sunny day, so it seems appropriate. Let us march and never weary, never falter by the way. Let us make the world more cheery in the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. Let us make the world more cheery in the sunlight of today. Let us grasp the hand that smites us and no longer hard at bay. Loving others never rights us in the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. Let us make the world more cheery in the sunlight of today. Let us bear each other's sorrows and give sympathy full sway. Looking for a bright tomorrows in the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. In the sunlight of today. Let us make the world more cheery in the sunlight of today. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated. Now, for our spirit greeting portion of our church service today, I know that I say this every week, but we do have a few people who may not have been here for a while or have a few new faces. So with the spirit greetings, what this is really about is to help prove the continuity of life, to help all of you to understand that your loved ones are with you and are looking out for you, that they love you, that they care, and that they are doing well. So this will be a brief message through me, from your loved ones, to those of you out there. And if you would like to receive a reading, when I will call on each person that I get a sense of, and I will be doing anywhere from 3 to 5 brief readings, depending on who Spirit suggests I go to. If you would like a reading, please stand and say yes, or just tell me your name. If you would not be interested in a reading today, I ask that you please just remain seated and tell me no thank you, and we'll move on from there. So, without further ado, let me see, where does Spirit want me to go? And this will conclude our spirit greeting portion of today's church service. Now, in lieu of a traditional closing hymn today, as you can see, I am a very traditional person up here at the platform. In lieu of a traditional closing hymn, because today is Andrew Jackson Davis's birthday, I think it would only be fitting that we all sing happy birthday to him. So I asked Jennifer, I know that you love to sing. Would you and Kevin kind of lead us in a rendition of Happy Birthday? Yeah. I apologize if I put you on the spot, Jennifer. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear AJ. Happy birthday to you. And now we'll be serious for just one moment. Well, you please bow your heads for our closing benediction. We close this service with the deepest gratitude for this day. We ask a blessing on all who have taken time to join us today. May we be ever learning, ever moving forward beyond the errors of the past, and knowing that we have an endless supply of new beginnings. Amen. That officially concludes our Christabelle Church service for today. And if you would like to hang around, give us about 2 minutes and we can bring in a bunch of cupcakes and some plates and stuff. And we'll have over here in the healing room, we'll do it where it's a little cooler than in the multipurpose room. So if you want to hang around, feel free. We'll be right back with cupcakes in honor of Andrew Jackson Davis. Otherwise, thank you all and have a wonderful week ahead.